Now, so we are ready now with Sam Sloan and the Wild Boys, and we have Henry and Bill Weekey and Carlton Gordo and Greasy. So I will turn the program over to Greasy at this time.
You know, doesn't this look like a lineup at Buncombe County Sheriff? I've never seen a sorry elected group. Actually, y'all are here under false pretense, and we might as well say it right now. Because most of these stories are pitiful and not funny. It's pitiful. So if you have to laugh, you know, try to just do it under your breath. Don't embarrass any of these people who got these pitiful stories. My first memory of this operation here, now called the Summer Club, was the Montreat Women's Club. And my grandmother Robinson, who called me Sugar, and the reason she did that is because she loved me to death. She would say, Sugar, I want you to take me down to the Women's Club meeting, but wait just a minute, let me get my pound cake. Now, y'all don't realize this, but there was a big mystery going on. People were getting sick as the devil after these meetings. And the reason was that my grandmother would take a pound cake, it was green on the top, green on the side, green on both sides, and it wasn't icing, it was mold. And so she'd go back there and she'd whack that thing 1, 2, 3, 4, slice it. She said, this will be just fine. The suspect of pound cake ever seen. The first story really came as the second or third telling. We had a Follies, a minstrel show, if you will, and the first story was about a Dr. McAllister. Now, not to offend anybody, but Dr. McAllister in those days was known to be more than slightly henpecked. And somebody came down to the post office one day, and Dr. McAllister was down there. They said, Dr. McAllister, we were up by your house, and something really bad's going on. And Miss McAllister's there by herself, and a wildcat just went through the back screen door into the house. He said, oh, really? He said, well, a wildcat will just have to get out the best way. I don't want to offend anybody, but, you know, what's the point of the story? We're all hit that. I want to turn this program now over to Lila McGahee. Right. Lila? Got a hook over here.
Hello? Yes. Well, I'm going to speak to you just in a few minutes about the lake. And we all know that the lake is the heart of Montreat. The lake is the center of Montreat. And we have pictures that go back to 1916, before there was a flood that washed a very primitive dam away. So we know the lake. Somebody dammed the creek up a long time ago and made our beautiful lake, which later got its name, Lake Susan. Until the early 1970s, everybody swam in the lake. The girls collected around the lake in the afternoon. The girls picked up their dates in the afternoon. The boys picked up their dates in the afternoon. Our own children took swimming lessons at 8 a.m. in Lake Susan. I wonder how many lifeguards of Lake Susan are in this room. Stand up. Stand up. All the lifeguards of Lake Susan. You all are a unique group, and we owe you our thanks for all those jokes. I don't think any of you ever had to save anybody, did you? Nobody ever drowned in Lake Susan or even went under. Now, I was the middle of 9 McGahee grandchildren, and we came every summer to Montreat, and a rite of passage when you were about 9 or 10 years old is that you screwed up your courage and swam from the beach to the dock in front of the inn. And then you ran home to Granny and told her you had swum across the lake without stopping at the dock or the raft, And she marched down in with her brownie camera and took your picture on the bridge. And her scrapbooks were full of 9 grandchildren who over the years swam that lake. How many of you swam the lake? It was fun, wasn't it? Now we thought you might like a little trip back in time, and you might like to see what some of our sweet grandmothers or maybe great-grandmothers and great-grandfathers had to wear to go swimming. So, let us see. Wearing a right off market, beautiful black. And let me see. Oh, Miss Margaret, you've got to pull up your stocking. Oh my goodness, your flesh shows. Now I want to read to you something very authentic. This comes from a book in the bookstore written by Ella Fountain Pratt, describing her mother's garb in 1919. Bathing was allowed in Lake Susan, but costume was regulated. My mother wore a basic black elbow-length sleeve leotard garment. Well, we left off the leotard. Since stockings which joined the bathing suit were required. Over this she wore just below the knee bloomers and an overdress of black sateen. She was a strong swimmer, but she weighed about 150 pounds. And as she swam across the lake, her progress with the sateen suit ballooning with air inspired a muttered comparison to a hippopotamus. My 12-year-old brother promptly knocked that strange boy off the raft. So here we have a 1919 authentic black swimming garb. And now here comes Miss Gracie Nichols wearing a beautiful 1920s suit. She's got her hair protected. You wouldn't want to get those curls wet. Oh my goodness, Miss Gracie, you're showing too much skin up here. We got to pin you up.
It's what Dr. Anderson said.
Oh my goodness. She's
say hubba hubba.
Then she'll be all set.
I've never been underwater.
Lake Susan with a handkerchief pinned across his undershirt like this. How many of them heard stories like that? And it would be tucked in. Isn't he grand?
In 1935, I was in a suit like this. Was going down to the lake one day to finally get off the top of the tall ladder, the tower in front of Assembly Inn, and the night before the boys had pushed it over into the lake.
Oh.
How many of you remember that? I think it was Joe McCoy and some of you.
Joe McCoy and some of them. Some of those mad boys. Some of those men.
And we have an authentic declaration from Brighton McCullum that her father-in-law, Brown McCullum Sr., was a lifeguard in the early 1920s, and he had to keep a supply of safety pins to pin everybody up.
Special hand for Lila. Lila, you made these outfits. Lila doesn't know this, but Dick told me earlier, he said we'd like to make a little profit on this, so Lila will be taking measurements. He should have told you that. I wasn't there to do anything like that. I covered it with Suzanne first. Probably not. We have now a special event to follow that other special event. And back in, I guess it was the 50s, an event occurred at the lake that could have qualified several people for excommunication from the Presbyterian Church. I'm going to ask Rob Robinson to come up here and talk about that. But you can't guess what it is.
I don't know exactly who did the original graffiti out in the middle of the lake, but I know that it was redone back in the mid-50s by my brother, who was working here back, I think 56, 57, something like that. When things were torn down out there, certain parts of the floats and things were saved and have been kept by my family ever since, or pretty much ever since. They were in the historical foundation for a short time. And so we brought them here. Maybe some of you will remember these pieces.
It's shocking. Get ready.
Yeah. That says, please do not walk on the water. Most of you can read, but they asked me to say that. Dick Ray, you might be able to read this for us.
Oh, I can. It says, please ask Santa Claus for all of your gifts.
Thank you, sir.
It was great.
I'm told that's Hebrew for O ye of little faith. Great, why? I don't know, it's all great to me. Anyway. But anyway, thought you would want to see this.
We kind of skip back and forth from one subject to another, and this one has to do again with follies and minstrels. And my brother was playing in a golf tournament. His name is Slimy, y'all know that. And Slimy was going to play in a golf tournament on Saturday. And so he told my mother at breakfast Saturday morning, it shows that night, he said, by the way, I'm going to need some old washed out overalls to be one of the end men in the minstrel tonight. My mother said, what? You need washed out, bleached overalls? You know, they didn't sell them in those days. She said, well, I can go get you some Levi's. I can get you some new blue jeans, but I can't find any bleached out, worn overalls. He said, well, that's what I need. And out the door he went. My mother was, I like these words, my mother was miffed. I like the better word, and she moved from being miffed to being frosty. She was hot. Well, my brother was gone, and there was a rap at the back door, and guess what? The suburban Roulane gas man living in the state was my brother's size, and he had the worst looking pair of overalls. They were really old. And my mother said, sir, I've got really an unusual request. I'm running a lot, you know, to listen to this. And she said, told him the situation. She said, I need some overalls just like you got, and I'll swap you a brand new pair of blue jeans. This guy said, lady, he said, I'm going to do it. But if my wife calls, you got to do it. This part of the story, I mean, you know, I'm trying to clean it up.
Well, how many of you saw Minstrel, Madness, or Musical? Raise your hand. Oh, great. Well, how many of you had a solo? Okay. Now, I want really, if I don't want to embarrass you, but I'd love you to stand up and at least tell us what it was. If you had a duet. And if you can sing the first line, you'll be doing better than a lot of us. Lila, I'm looking at you first. What is yours?
Oh, goodness. What got Dick and me to sing a duet, and we ended up singing There's a Long, Long Road Winding to the Land of Our Dreams, and that summer we got married.
Okay, who else raised their hand?
I'll tell you one.
Okay, great.
I sang I'm in love with the girl with the 3 blue eyes.
Get topic.
Anything better than you?
Topic.
Well, in the first one, I think I sang Sweet Georgia Brown. And I remember the Wild Boys would always tease me because of saying 2 left feet. I'd always get confused and say 2 feet left. And then another one, Toffee and I, and somebody else. Is Toffee here?
She's back in.
Yeah, who, say in a Red Schoolhouse, didn't we do that?
Well, we did something about the women's suffrage. Don't you remember? They had the signs.
Oh, yeah, and then I did the Red Schoolhouse with 2 other girls. And then in the last Madness, the reunion, I did Happy is the Ocean, I think. Then I think I did something else, but I can't remember.
Well, you also did Sam Hope song. Samuel
R. Hope.
R.
Can you sing that one?
I don't remember that.
And Montreat Minstrel. Also Montreat Minstrel.
Not the Charleston with
That too. She said both.
Where there is Clinton, and this was part of the John L. Road. Dee was a nice, did tell me why this was, and Henry danced. And he kept his feet. Tish Johnson taught him how.
There's got to be some more.
Really?
Jimmy Hamilton and I sang. They all laughed at Christopher Columbus when he said the world was round. That's the last laugh now.
Anybody else? Go Toppy.
Oh, I did 2 that I can remember. I did Goofus, and both of the songs I did were comedy things, my solos, because I always wanted to be laughed with instead of laughed at. But one was Goofus, and then there's Ann Curry McCall here. She taught me the funniest song, and she says she can't remember it, but she needs to, about the burglar bowl. Y'all remember that? No. Okay. But then I did some things with Sunshine, and did several things with Mary Rock. Yeah.
Trying to forget.
You're not going to say.
Anybody else? I don't want to miss.
I sang Stormy Weather. I think it was Stormy Weather. In a minstrel, it was Wardlow. Did
You were a torch singer.
I got to wear an evening dress to be white.
Mary Jo did. I could have danced all night.
Anybody else?
That dirty old Bill.
Dirty Old Bill? Did you sing that one?
Well, his old man, his name was Bill, lived on the side of Carberry's Hill, never been bad, never will. Heart to him, dirty old Bill. We're saying, horses don't bet on people. That's got too much sense.
I'm going to mention that in a minute. Highway. And there's some pictures of the Wild Boys doing the got took.
I got took.
Anyway, does anyone know when the minstrels started or began? I'm not sure of that date. I don't know. Butterfly Hamilton did one, and I don't know whether his was the first one or not.
Long before that, Dr. Pratt used to be the interlocutor. And Dr. Pratt did them for years, and then after that, Bum Pat was the interlocutor.
Henry?
It's Crummy. Bob Crummy.
Bob Crummy did one.
Well, the ones I remember were directed by Ann Curry McCullough and John L. Curry. And one of Ann's shows was in 1954, and our former governor of North Carolina, Jim Martin, seemed to have stolen the show. He had 3 specialty numbers and was an in-man. That started his political career. I'd like Ann to stand up because she worked so hard. As she said, she attended a lot of the rehearsals and then had to go home before the show because their time was up, and that seems to have happened to some people who got to rehearse and then they had to go home. Their 2 weeks were up. In a minstrel, you have a chorus, and we were all in, the girls were in evening dresses, and I think the guys were in tuxedos, as I recall at some point. And then the in-men were, at that time, in the waybacks, were blackface. I also understand that the black community really enjoyed coming to these shows. The in-men tell jokes and interact with the interlocutor. Ann Curry and Wug directed some of the first white-faced minstrels. Some of the highlights I remember, before I do that, I want to show you this picture, because this is a picture we revived, got out when we did the revival in the 80s. This is Wug. Henry is presenting a gift. This is my husband, Perrin Wright, playing a trombone that's about as big as he is back then. And we had another picture that went with it that had more of the same. And I'm in that, and I'm kind of an overgrown teenager.
That's Jimbo Bryan.
Right. Jimbo, Corky King, Jane Frist, Wardy Abernathy, Betsy Bryant, and you may know some of the other people, but anyway, it's a wonderful picture, and we're going to put it up on the bulletin board.
Edith Conley had a huge backdrop.
We're getting there. But thank you, because we wouldn't want to miss out on that. Some of the highlights I remember: Jim Hamilton's Glowworm, Fairman Cummings singing "If All the Raindrops Were Lemon Drops and Gumdrops, Oh What a World This Would Be," The Girl with the 3 Blue Eyes, Mary Evelyn Knight Sweezy's Torch Songs, Sunshine Connor Norwood's beautiful solo, you didn't mention this, of Summertime.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Beautiful, beautiful songs. And then the chorus enjoyed singing the 4-cent stamp. The 4-cent stamp will all go broke on the 4-cent stamp. At some point, changed the name Minstrel to Madness. In 1981 and 1983, we revived the Madness with WUG directing, and we had an intergenerational show, hearing such numbers as 5-year-old Catherine Coonley singing My Dad Works at the University, Ruth Curry and Jim Hamilton's song, duet, They All Laughed at Christopher Columbus. And in 1981, Sam Hogue, Wade Boggs, and I had a power struggle singing Anything You Can Do, I Can Do That. And then the unforgettable showstopper when the Wow Brothers came out wearing nothing but wooden barrels, singing, We Got Took. And the chorus chimed in with, Horses don't bet on people. I can see Susan Neville carrying an umbrella, leading the chorus line and singing in the rain. And who can forget the kick line doing shoe fly pie and apple pan dowdy? I never get enough of that wonderful stuff. Does anyone remember Hot and Humid? Hot, cold, and humid. It's always something humid in Montreat. Okay, I would like to show you the backdrops, and we have our artists. If you'll stand up, and I need some help, though. They're under the table, Karen and Henry and Ted. That'd be great. We have 2 of them. Yeah. They hung from the back of the auditorium. It was very, very high. And Edith did all the
Montreat Band is probably price of stamp goes to 44 cents. Recipe. Yeah. I like to read the recipe. A forecast hot and humid.
The second one's plagiarized from the food line.
Ask Lisa Firefish to let me know
the University of Patrons and Sponsors. We're so glad they were saying. Whether it was in the 50s or 80s, the musicals were a time of getting to know each other in a whole new way. Margaret Wardlaw Gilbert was my aunt-in-law, directed many shows. She was remarkable in getting us on stage, singing solos and dancing, giving us the confidence to do this. She made us all stars. Not only did we sing in musicals, but we had singing in the barn once a week as a club activity. We met on the stage with big long song sheets singing the Titanic, the Desperado, On Top of Old Smoky, I'm an Old Cowhand, and so many others. Margaret Carpenter Neal was one of our music club leaders. Music in Montreat. The traditions carry on in many ways. Clubs have music as a weekly activity, and you can hear the group singing sometimes as they march around Montreat, especially the Kindies singing, We Are the Kindies, Mighty Mighty Kindies. To all the directors and shows, the music leaders of shows and music leaders, Butterfly, Wug, Ann, John, all the rest we mentioned. And those of us before and after, we are grateful to these delightful tunes and beautiful memories.
I think you left one out.
What?
Emmy Hay sang Hard-Hearted Hannah, the Vamp of Savannah. And we had to have 3 vials of ammonia to revive the Wild Brothers. And so did a few other guys out here laughing too. You didn't deny that, did you? Aaron Life's going to talk to us about hiking a little bit. Maybe talk a lot. Make a long story short. Maybe you didn't know that there was hiking in Montreat before there even was a Montreat. After all, it was a sheep ranch. But you could get on the creek, walk the trail up to the top of Graybeard. You could also get on a horse and ride it to the top of Lookout. And don't ask me how they did that. You could also keep going over the tops. Past Graybeard, you could walk all the way over Rocky Knob and Pinnacle and Potato Knob, all the way to Mount Mitchell. When you got to Potato Knob, you joined the Mitchell Trail that came up from the North Fork Valley, which is where all the explorers, including Elisha Mitchell, launched their trips back in the 1800s. So there was quite a bit going on there. The Mount Mitchell Railroad changed a whole lot. People could actually hike on the railroad, and of course that's exactly what they did. And in fact, there's a photograph down in the Nature Center of a woman in an ankle-length cotton skirt walking right down the railroad track here, right up here on the Trestle Road on the side of Lookout. But of course you could also climb up the side of Graybeard, get on the railroad, and hike all the way to Mount Mitchell. The railroad developed Camp Alice, which was overnight accommodations for passengers on the railroad, but you could also go up there as an overnight hiker and stay, and that's what lots of people did. When the railroad was torn up in 1921, they built a toll road in 1922, and you could do the same thing there. You could drive up if you wanted to, but you could also hike. And people have been hiking that toll road to Mount Mitchell ever since. There are obviously too many hiking stories to tell. Hikers could start at Potato Knob and go all the way down to Craggies and end up in Swannanoa. Perhaps you heard Jack Gaw tell his famous story of how he and Sam Wiley and Wade Boggs and John Mack Walker started out to take that hike. They took a wrong turn halfway down and ended up down in Ox Creek near Weaverville. They didn't have a penny to their name, but they did spot a man in a pickup truck. And they sheepishly asked him if he would give them a ride. And he was very nice, and he agreed, and he gave them a ride all the way back to Montreat. And it was clear when you listen to Jack tell that story that the embarrassment of taking that wrong turn was far outweighed by the pride of having completed that hike. My mother tells the story of an overnight trip when she was courting my father, and when the time came to come back from Mount Mitchell the next day, Sam Wiley jumped up and said, "Let's go over Potato Knob." And so instead of taking the railroad or the toll road back, they went over Clemens Peak and Potato Knob and down. 50 years later, my mother still told that story and grumbled, and it was clear that she had not forgiven anybody.
And why is it that Sam Wiley's name keeps popping up in all these stories? My father used his father's car to make a quick buck. He would take packs for overnight hikers, drive them up Coal Road to Camp Alice, unload them up there, and then drive back with their packs the next morning while they walked up and down without encumbrance. And he made 50 cents a pack, which was pretty good money back in the Depression era. Or maybe it was still the Roaring Twenties at that time. There are lots of lookout stories, of course. You've probably all heard the Harriet Stiles story of how she and her aunt came out to go with the group up the top of Lookout. The aunt came out in a long skirt and a corset. Halfway up, the corset came off. She discreetly backed off, took the corset off, threw it over the side of the mountain. When they came back down, everybody looked up in the top of a rhododendron bush, and there was this corset. So the guide, who was a man, I took along a stick and fished the corset off the top of the bush and gave it back to her. She was greatly embarrassed. Will Kennedy also tells a similar story of escorting a young lady to the top of Lookout. She was wearing long johns. Halfway up, the long johns came off. Will claims he turned his head discreetly, but we don't really know. Mary Jo and I went up one night after midnight under the flimsy pretext of watching a meteor shower. 6 months later, we were married. It goes without saying that the best Montreat hiking story is the one that you participated in, because it's clear that these are the ones that are etched in your Montreat memories forever. But just in case you need another story, Glenn Bannerman has one that he wants to tell you.
This is not about Lookout, although I've got a story about Lookout. Eva and I came to Montreat for the first time in 1957. I grew up a Methodist, and Lake Junaluska was our conference center. But I was invited to come and do recreation at the old Christian Education Leadership School, and also a young adult conference. And so I came and fell in love with Montreat, did a decent job, I guess, because I was invited to come back for different conferences. And I was invited to come and do recreation for the women's conference. They had not had a full-time recreation leader. And so I was invited to come and do a program of recreation. So I lined up all kinds of things. One of the things, we had copper enameling kilns up Anderson. Ladies come make jewelry stuff. And the only thing I had forgotten about was it takes time to put them on and heat them and so forth and all. They would leave and I would stay till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, firing all this jewelry. The next day they'd come put the earring backs and pins and all. But the highlight of that experience of the Women's Conference director, Dr. James Sidney, professor of music at the Presbyterian School of Christian Education, ATS at that time, where both of us taught. He's a bird man. And so I said, Jim, one of the things we need to offer the ladies is a bird walk in the morning. He said, fine, I'll be glad to lead it. So I made an announcement in Anderson Auditorium to the women and said, any of you would like to come for a bird walk in the morning, we'll meet at Winsboro Porch, the old Winsboro Porch right up here, you know. And we'll meet at 6:30. And I'll have a cup of coffee there for folks, and we'll take a bird walk with Dr. Sidney. So Jim, Devin fixed me a thermos of coffee and a little cream and sugar and cups, and met Jim at the dam. He was staying at the end. We walked across, and when we got down here to way out, we heard all this chatter and all this noise. And Jim said, what is that? I said, I don't know. At this time of morning, what in the world? It's certainly not birds. And so we got up to Winsboro. There were 82 women that had come for the bird walk, and the first thing they said was, where's the coffee? And I had that thing, I said, Lord Jesus, you fed them, you know. Can you do something with this coffee? Well, Jim had said, walking up the hill, he said, now we have more than 10.
you'll have to take half, and I'll take half. I've never let a bird walk in my life. So we got up and he said, well, there's nothing to do. He explained to the ladies, we'll walk around the lake. We may see some birds, may not, but you've got to be quiet. Well, we started down and we cut in front of Hallaton. Well, on the poles down there, all of a sudden, 2 mockingbirds came. One over here and one there. And they sang all the different calls back and forth, and the ladies were quiet. And we walked on down, we got down to the gym, and all of a sudden this flock of birds landed up on the wire, and they just sang their heart out. We walked on around the lake there, and everywhere we looked, on the wires and stuff, birds were there. And we got on down, went across the dam, went back up to Winsboro. And Jim said to me, he said, see that? The Lord doth provide. And so, the other thing of the women there, I've gotten to tell this, and I'll make it short. We were having a class on recreation leadership and games and stuff, and I mentioned, I said, you know, people forget how to play games. How many of you remember button, who's got the button? Or how many of you remember dog in the bone? And it's one lady said, oh, I haven't played that in years. Let's play it. And I said, okay. So I put a chair up here, and you know, you put a eraser in school, or you put a shoe. And the idea is somebody sneak up there and get it. If they get it, then they get to, you know, take your place. If you're making a noise, the person sitting up there with their eyes closed, point to where the noises come, say, bow wow. And you go back and sit down. I wish I had a movie. All these ladies all dressed up, and during those days they wore heels and stockings. And they were slipping their shoes off, and these old metal rickety chairs, and they were getting up and sneaking up there, and they'd go, bow wow. Go back. And after, someone got it, so, but after that, as we were leaving, one lady came up to me, she said, have you got an interest in the hose business? I said, why? She said, these little pine floors, there have been more hose ruined with splinters and runs, and I don't think anybody has walked out here with a pair of hose that the foot is not ruined somehow or another. I said, no, I don't, but you know, they want to play. If they want to play, I'll leave them. Thank you.
We're going to start with Henry, and he's going to tell us a couple of stories from way, way back. I mean, this goes way, way back. And then Bill will tell some from not quite so far back. And then Carter will tell some that are just figments of his imagination.
Back in the dark ages, there was a collegiate club, which was made up of the college age group. The college age group are all working nowadays, but in those days there were lots of college students and high school students. And every Tuesday night they would have a collegiate meeting where there would be some sort of a program, and they would pass out the pertinent and do various kind of entertainments of that sort. But one of the things that they had in the collegiate club was the Bonehead Club. How many people remember the Bonehead Club? Well, you had to do something rather outrageous or egregious or embarrassing. I was going to leave that out. To be nominated and voted into the Bonehead Club. Collegiate Club met on Tuesday night, and so this has also, the story has to do with the minstrels, and I had a part in the minstrel in which I had to play a guitar, and it was on getting close to the time of the minstrel. We were getting close to the dress rehearsals, not quite dress rehearsals, but this was in an afternoon at about 4 o'clock. We had a rehearsal, and as I was noticed before I was going to it that my guitar string was broken. So I figured I could get into Asheville in time, get a new guitar string, and be back in time, at least maybe a little bit late for the start of it, but at least in time to rehearse my number. There was no I-40 at that time. There was only Highway 70. 5 lanes, just like it is. 2 going one way, 2 going another, and a passing lane in the middle. Well, I was moving along pretty fast because I wanted to get back in time, and I got to OT, and I looked at it, and there was this interesting car behind me that had some blue lights on it. And I thought there must have been some criminal ahead, but the siren went off, and it became apparent that there was this nice officer who wanted to talk to me. I went over, and he said, "Let me see your wallet." And I said, "Well, what?" He said, "It'll have your driver's license in it, won't it?" I said, "Yes." So I gave it to him. And he said, "Well, officer, what was it that I was doing?" He said, "Well, sir, I was 17, 18. You were going 72 miles an hour in a 60-mile-an-hour zone. We don't like that. I see Texas plates. We don't like that in North Carolina. Just follow me." He had my wallet, and I couldn't do that. So we drove into Asheville, Pack Square, parked right in front of the City Hall, and he said, "Come with me," and I came with him, went inside, and court was going on. And he said, "Sit right there." So I sat right there, and then waited a minute, and pretty soon the bailiff said, "And the next case is the state of North Carolina versus Henry Wild." Fair. The officer explained to the judge what it happened, and Judge Shirley Meade said, "Well, how do you plead?" I was going over the speed limit, and so I said, "I plead guilty." And so he said, "Fine, that'll be $50 fine and court costs for $98.50. Next case." So they led me on off, and I said, "Now what do we do?" He said, "Well, you just, pay the $98. I had just enough for a guitar string. I said, "Now what do I do?" They said, "Well, we just have to lock you up, put you in jail, until you can get the fine, pay the fine." I said, "Well, how do I get the money?" And they said, "Well, you can make 1 telephone call." That sounds pretty easy. Back then, the telephone system in Montreat was not like it is today. No cell phones, no phones in the homes. There was a telephone operator above the post office, and the Assembly Inn had a telephone. The gate had a telephone. The president's office had a telephone. The president of Montreat College had a telephone, and that was just about it. There weren't many. Realizing my choices, I didn't want to talk to Dr. Anderson. So I said I worked it so I could get to the gate. Be one of the gate boys. Well, what is my luck? There was Randy Taylor. Hi, he said, "Hi, Andrew. Where are you?" I said, "Well, Randy, I really want this to get around, but I'm in jail." Nashville. I said, "Can you do something for me?" "Oh, yes, I'd be happy to." I said, "Would you go tell my mother that I'm in jail and I need $100 so I can get out of here?" "Randy, don't tell anybody about this." "Oh, no." So then they locked me up behind the bars. Well, I sat there and waited, thinking my mother would get over there in a real hurry. Hours went by, and by the time it was about 5:30 or 6, and the jailer came by and said, "You ready for dinner?" I guess so. And so they handed me a tin plate, and there was some collard greens on one half and grits on the other. Some cornbread, and that was dinner. So I thought I'd better eat it anyway, or at least try to. So after another hour went by, the jailer came and said, "Well, come on with me now." And I came out, and there was, in another room, was my mother and my Uncle Irvin, who was a Presbyterian minister. And they said, "Come on, yeah, we paid the fine. You can go with us." I said, "Mother, how in the world "Did you have $100?" That was a lot of money back then. And he said, "Well, I got it from your Uncle Irvin, and he did a funeral last week, and someone gave him a $100 bill to receive it with his wallet." This was Tuesday night, and I missed the rehearsals, but I could make it to collegiate meeting, because it was, and I didn't need to stop for dinner. Meeting a little bit late, and they said, we're having a meeting of the Bonehead Club, and there's a new member. They said only it happened 4 hours ago. That's how I joined the Bonehead.
When that policeman
I didn't realize there were going to be old folks here.
When you told that policeman you were from Texas, he said, "Well, we don't drive like that in Texas," and you said that we got better cops than you.
There was also on the minstrels, one year, Bill and Carlton and I had a number that we were going to do. We were going to play guitars and banjos, and we were going to sing "These Bones Gonna Rise Again." So this was our big number. The night of the performance, somehow, and the details escape me, Carlton got mad with Bill and me. They got war. And anyway, he fumed around and said, so we showed up at the minstrel, got our guitars, put them beside us, and then banjos. Unbeknownst to us, Carlton had untuned Bill's and my instrument. So they announced, all right, now the Wild Brothers are going to play and sing "These Bones Are Going to Rise Again." So we walk to the front, take our bows, rum to get in the right chords. Awesome. We had two choices. We could either tune them right then on the spot, or we could sing loud and play softly. So that's what we did. And Carlton was there grinning the whole time. Really gotten even with it. And Bill, something happened the next day, didn't it?
Oh yeah. The next morning, of course, was Sunday morning, and I went to church, and as I came out, this nice old lady came up to me, and she said she thought I was Lee Williamson, who had a solo, and she said, "Lee, you were just wonderful last night." And I said, "Well, thank you very much." And she said, "But weren't those wild boys from Texas terrible?" Well, I said, "Yes, ma'am, they surely were." You know, talking about the minstrel shows that Mary Jo had mentioned, the minstrels, and later the Madness. As many of you remember, we always had an interlocutor and we had in-men, and we always tried to find an unusual or different way for the in-men to make their entrance, because they would always get the whole cast up there and the in-men would not be there, and we'd do something. And you may remember that in the auditorium, on either side of the stage up above, there's a window on either side. If you don't remember, next time you go in the auditorium, take a look. Way up on the left there's one, and way up there on the right. So they were getting ready to start the show. The audience was out there, and then Dr. Bum Pack kept saying, "Well, we're ready to start, but where are the in-men?" And no in-men. And finally, what we did, all the three of us and a couple of others, we had a commode seat, and we on the end of a rope, and we let it down very slowly, and we all came down that rope. And that's where we started. started. And speaking of the auditorium reminds me of something else, and that is one time a group of us thought how funny it would be if on Sunday morning there weren't any hymn books. We were getting to announce the hymns, and nobody could sing. And so we spent several hours on Saturday night gathering up every single hymn book, and we put them in the ladies' restroom in one of the stalls, and we put a sign on it that said "out of order." I'm not going to say everybody was involved. Jim O'Brien was there, and also Tim Webb. Some of you may remember Tim Webb, an Englishman who used to spend the summers here. At any rate, we thought how great it would be, and sure enough, the next morning, it was a strictly non-musical service. Well, I'll tell you one more, and I'll give it over to Carlton. Another thing that we really absolutely loved to do back when we had Camp Montreat. How many people remember Camp Montreat, the girls' camp? Well, if you remember Camp Montreat, you probably also remember that back above what is now the swimming pool and the Dunn Pavilion, and going up to what is now Newell Field, was an apple orchard. And these girls who went to Camp Montreat stayed in cabins that had 10 roofs. And in those days, we had club activities not only during the day, we always had one every night as well. So after the night activity, 10 o'clock or so, after these nice little Camp Montreat girls had gone to bed, we would love to sneak up to the apple orchard. You gather a whole bunch of apples and start throwing them down. And eventually, you would find your mark, and you could hear the bang, bang, bang on the roof of these cabins, and screams. And then these boy counselors that they had would come out and try to find us. But by that time, everybody would disappear, and they never, ever caught us.
One of the things that sort of marked Montreat in those eras was hitchhiking. Nobody thought anything about not sticking their thumb out and getting a ride. And if you remember, one of the morning activities, every morning, 11:30 in the morning, we'd have a volleyball game. And down there where the barn is now, or just this side of it, where the gymnasium is now. And it was a workup game. There were no teams. You just work your way up from one after each point. You'd move around, and boys and girls. Sometimes we'd have maybe 30, 45 people on each team, and you'd work up quite a sweat and get hot. And immediately afterwards, what we used to do, several fellows, would hitchhike over to Black Mountain to Uzel's drugstore. Uzel's drugstore is now on the corner there where Town Hardware is now, but. And we would go and get a frosted root beer. And I remember one time we went over there and we got a ride in a pickup truck right there by the Assembly Inn. We all hopped in with our dog, had a dachshund at that time, and went over to Black Mountain, got out of Uzel's drugstore, and we were so excited to go in the drugstore we forgot the dog. Well, we went all over Black Mountain trying to find this little dachshund, which we finally found. The man back in the truck brought it back to the drugstore, and we got it. So I remember one time, it was so hot, we went in there, and they'd get these frosted mugs of root beer, and we'd then have a belching contest. Well, one time I was there with Greasy, and we had this contest, and I broke the plate glass window. Split from top to bottom with one of my
He's been bragging about that ever since. Go ahead.
where they we would have the square dances at the barn like you do now, and also would have skating one other night a week. Well, back in those days, the Black Mountain was a little bit different from what it is now. It was a little bit rougher, a little bit just different. The Black Mountain people weren't as nice and friendly and as they are. Relations have improved a lot. Well, it was a rough crowd of Black Mountain boys that would like to come over to the square dances, and they would have. I remember sideburns way down to here, and hair that would be straight out, and we used to call them greasers. And they would come over and dance with all the Montreat girls. Well, the guys from Montreat didn't really like that, and so they got into kind of a confrontation one night, and there was a pushing and shoving, and then one of the more Montreat boys showed up, and they started the Black Mountain boys started running across the barn where they were, and one of them fell down and twisted his ankle, and he was having trouble getting around. Here comes Sam Wiley's story again. He was there visiting, but he was older than most everybody there, and there was this poor Black Mountain boy there, and he said, well, you know, I'm a doctor. I better examine you. Let's go into the bathroom back here so I can examine. I guess it was his knee rather than his ankle. He did, and so, boy said, okay, the doctor's here. He said, well, now, let me just take off your pants so I can examine your knee. My boy took off his pants, and Sam Wally took the pants and ran away with
I don't know if you remember the old Montreat store, and which picture of it over there, and they had so limited things, but they had a butcher shop in there, and there was a butcher that came up here every year from Meridian, Mississippi. In this case, he would spend the summers up here and act as a butcher. And my mother thought it was a very good idea to get to know the butcher, because you could get better cuts of meat, she thought. And she got to know this guy, and she finally said, well, you know, what do you do in the wintertime? And he said, well, I'm an undertaker.
We'll rest the wild boys for a little bit. We'll rest our ears. Hey, somebody asked me to tell the next story, and I'll make this short. I was with had my grandmother's 1941 blue Pontiac sedan. We were coming through the gate about 11 o'clock on Sunday night, and there was one guy with me, and the gate boy said, there's a little pig over here loose in this field. I said, well, that might be an opportunity. So we stopped and ran out in the field and caught this pig, about this pig. Very lively little pig. I told my buddy, I said, you drive my grandmother's car, take me up to the Velvet Moose. And the girls that were in Montreat were staying there. It was their dormitory. So I crept up the steps, put the little pig right out on the landing, and goosed him about the water. And the girls got up pretty fast. Your father, Coach Whittle, had a staff meeting the next day, and we were sitting around. And he loved it, to tell you the truth, but he had to do something. It looked good. He said, last evening, a terrible thing took place in this very building. And then he just I tell stories about my grandparents. My mother had the typical relationship you might have with a mother-in-law. And we went to see National Velvet at the Pix Theater in Black Mountain about 6 o'clock one Saturday evening. we all went as a group. My grandmother was Sloan, and my grandmother Sloan was a very prim, proper lady. But she didn't have great eyes, and it was still daylight outside, and she sat in some guy's lap. Made my mother's day, y'all.
You remember this?
We were out there one night, and my grandmother had two sisters and a younger brother, but three sisters were totally different. My grandmother was very, very conservative, and then one was my Aunt Pearl, the adult school, and she was a partner in the house there. And then my Aunt Bess was the youngest, and she was wont to drink sherry in the afternoon. And on the weekend, maybe she drank something stronger. But she insisted on staying on this little bedroom we had off the back porch. And the reason she did is she wanted to have a little nip. Well, my grandmother Robinson was a great lady. She was wonderful. She was a terrible cook, and she was also a bad driver, but she was just a terrible cook. She would sit right in front of the stove and look at the toast as it evaporated. I mean, I've never seen anything like that. We were looking right through there. So, one day, my grandmother Robinson had gotten her car stuck in the creek, but we didn't have all-street parking. She'd gotten stuck, and she was insistent on getting it out of the creek. About that time, my grandmother was gunning the engine, and there was a tire just barely touching a rock, but it was touching it. My Aunt Bess came out of the back room after having her drinks, and there was this acrid tire smoke billowing up over the porch. I mean, it looked like a smoke screen. And my Aunt Bess said, "My Lord, what is Sue cooking now?" Is it time to say? Well, I was going to tell you one more story. I want to call, we haven't called on Wright and McCallum. He's got a story. Where's Wright?
We probably have the only house in Montreat with a bullet hole in the front window from the moonshiners. During Prohibition.
Get the microphone there.
The McCallum house down on Assembly next to the old tennis courts is probably the only house in Montreat with a bullet hole in the window from the moonshiners. During Prohibition, they had stills somewhere up Graybeard. Nobody ever professed to know exactly where. And everybody on Assembly, according to my father-in-law, was told to be sure you were in bed by 10 o'clock at night. And sometime between 10 and daylight, they would all come down. And he said you could hear them, hear the trucks coming down and the cars coming down. But one night, somebody that was visiting forgot and got up and was writing a letter in the front room with a lantern on, and they did not try to shoot the person, to be fair. They shot just to warn him to get that light out. But we still have the bullet hole in the window down there.
You know, when